Hello and welcome to Where the Road Rises, Law Lessons Legacy, with me, your host, Eileen Curlin-Walsh. On recent shows, we have talked about estate planning, Social Security insurance planning for baby boomers. So, continuing today in the spirit of preparing for retirement, we will revisit financial planning, not just the traditional fare, but a new holistic approach to the subject with our guest, Dan Dawson, Vice President of Wealth Management at Raymond, James & Associates. Dan is a certified financial planner with 17 years experience helping families create wealth and plan financial security around their vision for their future, their goals, and their dreams. He helps reduce that uncertainty that can creep up around money by educating his clients on the implications and outcomes of their financial decisions. When we know better, we do better, and Dan will teach us how. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Eileen.
Okay, so it's great to have you here on the program.
Nice to be
always
here.
A great subject to talk about. We're all interested in money. So let's get started with you and your journey, your background, your history. What led you to Raymond James and financial planning?
Sure. So my journey to financial planning started in high school. I didn't know it at the time. We had an economics class my senior year, and we had to learn about the stock market and investing. And so they did what they do, which is we're going to have a contest. You know, everyone picks 3 stocks, and whoever does the best after a month wins. And so in about a month, I made 45% on my investments, and I thought, well, I've really got this investing thing figured out.
So you picked Apple.
It was even before that,
Oh my.
before Apple got good. So, you know, I turned 18 then, a couple months later, and I said, well, I know this investing thing. I opened up a brokerage account. I took the money that I had saved from my high school job, and I deposited and started investing, and almost immediately it was gone. So, it turns out that I happened to turn 18 the same month that the tech bubble burst.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And I found out the hard way that I wasn't just brilliant at investing like I thought I was, that I had just been picking the riskiest stocks. And so when the market was booming, everything did really well. And then when the market went the other direction, all that risk, it crushed me. You know, it made me lose it all. So it was a good lesson to learn early with a little bit of money rather than waiting until later. And so when I went to college at the University of Illinois, I studied finance so that I could figure out what I was doing. And while I was there, a friend of mine from college said, you know, my dad's a financial advisor and he's looking for summer interns. Got an investment research project that they want to do, and I thought, that sounds perfect. This is a way to learn. So did the summer internship, shadowed him for the entire summer, got to see what it was like, fell in love with the work, and have been doing it ever since.
Wonderful. And Raymond James, a very prestigious company. And how long have you been there?
So almost my entire career.
Oh, okay.
So 16 years now.
Oh,
Yeah, almost longer.
excellent. So tell me, do you have an ideal client, a particular type of client that you specialize in helping?
I do, and it hasn't always been that way. But over the years, what I found out, what I learned was, you know, most people in this country are self-made. So they didn't start out with any money, and when you're starting out, you don't have any money. That can be pretty uncomfortable. So you work really hard and you try and save. And most people think, well, if I could just make $100,000 or $200,000 or $500,000, or if I just had $1 million in the bank or $2 million or $5 million, you know, then I could stop worrying about money. I wouldn't have to worry anymore. And a small percentage of the population hits those numbers, and they get there and they go, wait a minute, I'm still worried, right? So it turns out you go from worrying about security, will I be okay, to worrying about complexity. You know, now that I have all of this money and this wealth, what's out there that could hurt me, that could take it away? Or is there some opportunity that I should take advantage of? And so when people start asking themselves those questions, that's when they come see me. That's my specialty.
And then you give them investment strategies.
We do. Yeah, investment strategies are a big part of what we do. And you know, it's not, I think maybe I learned this lesson early on, like I mentioned in high school. For us, it's not about how can we be the smartest and pick the best and outperform the market. It's really about here's where our clients are at point A, here's their point B, where they're trying to go. How can we get there with the least risk and the most amount of certainty possible? And that doesn't always mean no risk. You know, a lot of my clients, most of them are retired or coming up on retirement, and the conventional wisdom is sort of, well, you're not allowed to take any risk anymore. You have to be safe. And I think that there's no such thing as no risk. You know, you can be safe and put all your money in cash, and then 20 years down the road, you'll realize everything costs more and you still have the same amount of money.
Yeah.
So you have to balance it. You have to look at when you'll need the money and sort of segment it accordingly. So
Yeah, and I'm sure when you're 25 versus 65 or 55 or 40 are all going to, that balance will shift, as well as what you're doing, as well as what your goals and dreams are.
Yeah, the balance should always shift, and you know, people change along the way. Their lives change. So what you thought were your goals at 25 are no longer your goals at 65, and the investments need to keep up with that.
So true. And is there, Dan, a magic number, or is everyone's magic number different?
Well, yeah, I think everyone's is probably a little bit different. It is the most common question that I get. You know, what's the magic number? Because it would be easy if you just said, well, everyone needs $1 million or $2 million, or you know, whatever the number is. But everyone's lifestyle is different, and everyone's goals and hopes are different, and those things cost different amounts. So I wish there was a magic number, but there's not.
But is there a magic process? In addition to investing, what other things should people be doing to prepare for retirement?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it is a process. And so, you know, I think about what my parents talk about, because they're retired now. And so they always say that every week is 6 Saturdays and a Sunday. And when I hear that as a financial advisor, I think, well, weekends are expensive. So, you know, the conventional wisdom that you need 70% or 80% of your pre-retirement income, I think should really be avoided, because you might need more when you're retired. You have all this free time and possibly a bucket list. So the process, the first step in that process, is really to map out what is the vision for retirement. What are the things you plan to do? What might those things cost? And of course that helps with figuring out if you can afford to retire and how you should structure your investments. But I think the biggest part of that is knowing what you'll be doing. You know, all the research shows that the people who are happiest in retirement, they retired to something. There was something to look forward to. The people who just retired from something, you know, I don't want to go to work anymore, they're disappointed.
That's excellent, retiring too. Because I have noticed with my seniors and clients, the more activity, friends, family, the golf, the travel, the organizations that they volunteer in, the more excited they are still about living, the happier they are about their retirement.
That's right. Those social connections are the biggest part.
So I never thought about that, to something rather than just from something. That will stay with me. What are some of the big mistakes that people make, Dan, when they're thinking about or planning for the future, their retirement?
Yes, I think there's a lot, but most of them fall into two categories. So the first category is making emotionally driven financial decisions, or at least just emotionally driven. And the second, broadly speaking, is taxes. And every once in a while you get one of those that fits into both buckets, and it really causes a lot of problems. So an example of that, the one that I see the most often, is mortgages. You know, it's I say pretty common. Most people in retirement have pretty strong feelings about having that mortgage paid off. They don't want that debt hanging over their head. It's a great goal, but what I see is day one of retirement, they take a big distribution out of their retirement plan and wipe out the mortgage, and there we are, we're debt free. And then April rolls around and they find out they just got crushed in taxes because they took out this big chunk of money. And so they end up paying more to the IRS than they would have paid to the bank in interest. And so I think what you need to do there is think about a strategy. Could we spread this out over a couple of years? It doesn't have to be all or none. We don't have to have a mortgage until we're 90, and we don't have to pay it off on day one of retirement. So that's the big one I see on the emotional side. And on the tax side, you know, the other one's more of what we call errors of commission. The taxes are more errors of omission. So you just don't know. That it's so complicated with the tax code. that you've got things maybe you should be doing, but who knows unless they go talk to someone about it or spend a lot of time doing research. You know, things like Roth conversions to minimize your lifetime taxes. Using donor advised funds so that you can get the most of your charitable giving. Make sure you maximize the deductions. And then other things like different income thresholds that people don't realize exist, you know, like Medicare. It's the same cost for everyone unless you go over a certain income limit, then you have to pay more. So I know a couple who thought they were doing the right thing and took their money market account and moved it to a new bank. They got a promotional rate and they earned an extra $1,000 of interest. But that $1,000 put them over the threshold for Medicare. So their Medicare costs went up by $1,800. So they, you know, it seems on its own like a great decision. We'll earn more interest, but you have to look at how does it affect the whole financial picture.
And Dan, is that where you help? So you are looking, we use the word holistic,
Yes.
so you're looking at every single decision your clients are making as they plan for retirement and as they retire and as they take Medicare, Social Security. So you are advising them on every single area of their financial life, not just their investments, it sounds like.
That's correct. Everything, if it touches money in one form or another, we advise on, provide strategy on. Of course, we don't implement everything because no one can be the expert in everything. So we have specialists that help with the Medicare claiming process and supplemental plans. And then, of course, we work with CPAs and attorneys.
Absolutely. The team. We
The
talk
team.
often about the team and how if you have the great investment strategist like yourself, if only you knew a great estate planning attorney, CPAs, insurance agents. I tell my clients, if you get that team on board and you have everybody working for you, because we all tend to have a little bit of a lens and blinkers, therefore, when we do become very specialized with what we do. So I'm thinking about the estate planning. What if something happens, incapacity, death? You're thinking about growing those investments, making sure that everybody is retirement ready, plus those other things. Someone needs to keep an eye on the taxes.
That's right.
Someone needs to make sure we have insurances to fund these trusts if we don't have the funds accumulated yet. So if you get on board that team, and we've brought here to the studio someone from each one of those groups that we've mentioned, you can be sure that everyone is working from you. Charge them with that responsibility. And that's the way you make sure that you do the very best. And what I have noticed over the years, Dan, is our careful savers are good investors who are careful with those pennies, know the value of the great investor, the great CPA, and the great attorney, because they help to build those funds and keep an eye on them from every angle. I love that. Let me ask you this, Dan, as we think about wealth and accumulating and planning for the future, how do you address wealth mindset with your clients? I'm a huge fan of Harv Eker and the Millionaire Mindset, and he focuses first, before you start planning your wealth, make sure that you don't have any unhealthy money blueprints from your parents, your childhood, your community. So do you kind of diagnose that in your clients, and how do you address it?
Yeah, I mean, it of course impacts the planning that we do, and things can get ugly with money, for lack of a better word, if you're trying to fix other problems with money. If there's something else going on in your life and you think, well, I'll just throw money at the problem and that'll fix it, that can cause some problems. So I know that there are good processes to sort of work through some of those issues. A lot of times, you know, I'm working with people who are 60 or 65, and I wouldn't claim to be able to undo things that happened in their childhood growing up. I don't have the right training for that. But I think we need to have kind of open and honest conversations about what was money like in your household growing up. What are your first memories around money? What does money mean to you? You know, it's a means to an end, and it means different things to different people. So from my end, it's really sort of raising awareness of those issues so that people can work on them for themselves and at least be aware, am I making this decision because it's the best for me financially, or is there something I'm doing here because my parents grew up in the Great Depression and that's influencing me still 90 years later?
And I bet, Dan, you find that once the funds start accumulating, once the strategies start working, and your clients see that they now have those funds and they start feeling more secure, that maybe they can let some of those fears fall away.
Yeah, it's not a quick process. I agree they can let the fears fall away, but it definitely takes some time. And especially, one of the most common things, the people who do accumulate significant wealth tend to be great savers. And a lot of times that's because of what they were taught as a kid, or some sort of past history that they've had with money. And so they get to a point where they could afford to enjoy it a little bit while they're here, but it's tough to let go of that mindset. So it takes an educational process ongoing for them to realize, okay, I will be okay, I can afford to do a little something for myself and my family.
Now, let's talk about legacy.
Sure.
My viewers are very familiar with me saying that it's not just your wealth, it's your wisdom. And we, in addition to estate planning and leaving the home and the property and the IRA to your family, we want you to leave your story, what your life has meant, your footprint here, and the wisdom that you have accumulated here. Leave that as a gift also. How do you incorporate legacy planning into your practice?
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's why what you do is so important, because the traditional estate planning spends all the time sort of getting the money ready for the kids, and it doesn't really get the kids ready for the money.
Oh.
And so I think that what ends up happening is kids or grandkids will end up inheriting this wealth, and they haven't gained the life experience or the wisdom or the investment knowledge to handle it wisely. And so sometimes it causes family issues and fighting or bad financial decisions where the money becomes more overwhelming or a burden instead of a blessing. And so I think going through and preparing the family early as part of that legacy planning process it can help avoid some of those problems. And on my end, what we found that works most successfully for the families we work with is encouraging them to start doing some of that while they're still alive. So, start giving some of the money now rather than waiting until they're gone. They get to see the impact that it's having on their family's life, so they get to enjoy it now. And on top of that, if there are going to be some issues, if it does cause problems in the family, if it does cause mistakes, they can learn from those mistakes on small amounts now rather than large amounts down the road.
Oh, that's excellent. And as you speak about family, Dan, I have to share with our viewers that you have a little 3-week-old baby as well as young twins and another singleton. So you have 4 young children and
4 kids, 8 and under.
8 and under, and a very busy practice. What's your secret for work-life balance? Because you're not getting a lot of sleep these days.
The secret is an amazing wife.
Oh, I love it.
What we talked about in our professional life, we all have our specialties, and I am able to spend the time that I need with the family, and when it's time to go do the work that I need to do for my clients, she steps in and handles everything. Yeah.
And how are your older children adjusting to the baby?
Even better than we could have expected. Yeah. It's all boys up until this point, so there's a lot of fighting. So it's nice that at this point the fighting is over who gets to hold her. And I sneak up and give her kisses on the head.
Yeah, that's just going to be so wonderful for you
Thank
going
you.
forward. And as a mother of 4 boys, I have to say I'm a little jealous of that baby girl. You'll have to share the secret of that. Now, I have one last question for you. So you have the privilege of sitting day after day with your clients, and there's a confessional element.
Sure.
When someone is saying, hey, I want your help to build my wealth, increase my wealth, plan for my future. And you hear their stories and their issues, their concerns. What has that taught you? What have you learned? How are we doing? What is your thoughts now? Even as a relatively young man, you've seen a lot of the human experience, and what's your take on it all?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I have gotten the privilege of learning from people who've been through more than me because of the age group of the clients that I work with, and it is, like you said, confessional. I tend to hear things sometimes that even family members don't know about, and I guess what I've learned is that it doesn't matter necessarily the numbers on the balance sheet. We're all just people, and we're all trying to do the best we can for our family. And and generally speaking, when people come in and they're talking about problems that are going on in the world, it's always, well, I heard that this is happening on the news, or this is happening. Things are going pretty well for me, but someone else, and then the next person comes in, things are going pretty well for me, but the other, I hear about all this bad news. So I think that generally speaking, we're in pretty good shape, but maybe people don't realize it.
Oh, I like that. And we need that kind of optimism. We need to know when we see so many headlines that ultimately, and I would agree, Dan, the exact same thing I see. People think because when I do estate planning and probate and wills that families fight all the time. Yes, occasionally they do fall out, but far more often there's love and generosity and giving, more than these kind of horror stories that you hear. So I would agree, we are doing great. And as we come up to Thanksgiving and the holidays, I think that's a lovely affirmation.
It is. There's a lot to be grateful for.
Yes, indeed. And I am grateful that you came here on the show, Dan. Why don't you tell our viewers how to get a hold of you if they would like more information about what you do?
Sure. So the best way to reach me is email or phone. Email is dan.dawson@raymondjames.com, and phone number is 312-869-3821.
And you have a website, you said?
I do have a website, but it's down until December 2nd.
Oh, under construction.
It's under construction. It will be raymondjames.com/vintage.
Oh, wonderful. And our great Carol, of course, will put the number on the screen. So thank you, Dan. Thank you, wonderful team at Channel 4. Thank you, viewers, for watching. And we will see you next time on Where the Road Rises. Thanks and bye.